You right there guys, this is Dale from Lone Wombat Airsoft, and today we're taking a look at Phoenix Airsoft in Mansfield. Now if you've not seen one of my video reviews, the way I always do it is I always put YouTube annotations up on either side of me, so if you're watching this on a PC you can click on those annotations and it's going to skip ahead to the part of the video that you're most interested in. Now before we get going as well, I need to point out this is a first impressions review. I'd never been to Phoenix before the day that I turned up on, and so this video review is based entirely upon my experiences of that day and that day only. And so with that out of the way, we'll dive straight on into it. So the site is located on the A616 outside of Ollerton, which is basically Mansfield. Now if you navigate into the site using SatNav, I've put the postcode in the description down below, and when I used that postcode I had no trouble at all navigating to the site. It drops you off at a house slightly up the road from the main entrance, but it's quite easy to tell where the entrance is from there. Once you drive through that main entrance, you need to bear right and go down the long track, and I mean this is a fair distance on the track from the main entrance to the safe zone. You're going to pass a lot of structures on the left hand side. These are not the site safe zone or anything, these are actually buildings that are used during play. You want to keep an eye out for this car park, which is a flat bit of concrete on the left of the main road. The car park itself had plenty of space for setting up, although it is located right next to the safe zone entrance and the firing range. And when you've got a couple of people walking around your cars with mags in, that did make me a little bit nervous. But during the games themselves, they weren't playing anywhere near the cars. It's just more the fact you've got people with loaded guns that made me slightly wary for my car's well-being. If you head through the opening at the main entrance, you're going to find yourself into the safe zone. So prices for the day were £25 for non-members and £20 for members. They also did have the option of high packages, which were £43, which includes your walk-on fee, 3,000 rounds of ammo, a face mask, camo and a gun. They also did a £50 optional hire package, which also threw in 2 grenades and a combat jacket. Now, it should be noted that you do need to book onto the site beforehand. It doesn't cost you anything to do so, it's just more of a case for them to gauge how many people are turning up for the day. It should also be noticed that lunch for the day is provided, but it is not included as part of your walk-on fee. It originally took the form of a burger, chips and a drink for £5, although when it actually came around to my turn for lunch, they'd actually ran out of chips. So I ended up having a hot dog and a drink for £2.50. The safe zone itself had more than enough room for setting up all your kit. You got plenty of bench space and places to sit down, and because it was tipping it down with rain all day, it actually managed to keep the entirety of my kit dry even though that rain was constant, so definitely a plus point in the safe zone for that. However, I do think there is a little improvement that needs to be done with the safe zone. The front is completely open to the actual site itself. There is a gate that goes across it, but the spacing between the bars that are too large to make it completely unable to catch PBs. Now, this does point into the car park and not the site as a whole, so it's not really a huge problem because people are not going to be firing in from that direction anyway. However, I still feel that having a safe zone net of some kind is kind of integral to it. Like, a safe zone needs to be enclosed. It's an area where you can take your glasses off with 100% certainty that nothing's going to happen. So unless it's fully enclosed, I don't think it really counts as a safe zone in that regard. There is a firing range out the front of the safe zone on the left hand side. It's basically a couple of bottles tugged together on a string between 2 trees. However, that does point into the main gaming zone, so you've got various trees at different distances to aim at and to calibrate your guns before the games themselves. So the staff on site were quite chatty and talkative between the players when they're coming back from games. They were asking how the day was going, that sort of thing. However, during the games themselves, I did notice there seemed to be a bit of a communication breakdown in places, mainly due to the kind of rules that are being played during the games themselves. Examples would be that one team was allowed outside of the buildings and into the woodland, where one team was confined just to the buildings, and certain different cases of the medic rule being implemented, that sort of thing. So tiny little communication breakdown there that I think could be improved upon. There was an instance in the start of the morning where the site owner was playing with someone else's gun in the safe zone, put the mag in and fired a couple of shots into the air. Now, these shots were going up and out of the safe zone, they weren't going anywhere near the players. However, I still feel that this is a pretty bad example to be setting to the players of your site. He'd obviously realised this the instant after and was quite apologetic for it. However, I don't think I could have just let that slide without a mention. Another thing was that the morning safety brief was very condensed and glossed over. This was a bit of a head scratcher for me because they knew full well that they had new players to the side that day, and new players that have never been there before, they are the ones that absolutely need to hear the morning safety brief in full, because site rules tend to vary depending on where you go. I had to ask for clarification on a couple of things, such as whether gun hits counted or what the medic rules were in some cases. an instance that I think also highlights the need for the morning safety brief is that halfway during the day in the safe zone, I actually got hit by a ricochet on my back. What had happened is that a player had come into the safe zone, had taken his mag out, but not actually cleared the gun. And because there was no one on the actual entrance to the safe zone checking for this, he brought the gun in and they were still around in the chamber. So when he accidentally pulled the trigger, it hit the wall and dinged into my back. Now, this is a pretty big fuck up in terms of making your safe zone safe. If you're not checking to make sure that the mags are out and the guns are cleared before people are coming back in, stuff like this happens. And I'm quite lucky that my back was turned in that instance. So definitely something to improve on now. That needs to be implemented as soon as possible. You can't allow this sort of stuff to be going on. Now, so what about the players themselves then? The small number that I managed to get talking to today were quite inclusive. They were quite chatty and wanting to know about the different places we've seen and how the day was going, and they made it feel quite friendly. Overall, however, there was a couple of instances that did raise my eyebrows. The main thing about this is that there was a significant amount of non-hit taking going on during the day. Now, I appreciate that it's cold, it's wet, people are wearing multiple layers in that sort of environment, and quite often when you've got clothes that thick, you can confuse raindrops for BBs and that sort of thing, so hit taking tends to happen a lot more during the winter for that reason. However, there were a couple of instances that I did actually capture on camera, some more blatant than others. Another thing that actually wound me up to a significant extent is that there was a lot of players that weren't indicating clearly when they'd been hit. So there was a fair amount of delayed reactions that I'd actually spotted where a player would hit, just take a couple of steps back and then like they'd only just raise their hand about 2-3 seconds afterwards, by which point I'd already reloaded and was firing a second shot down range. So you really need to emphasise to the players that they need to put that hand up, call out hit the instant they are to make sure that that secondary fire doesn't start coming in, because the player that shot them in the first place doesn't realise that they're dead or not. There were cases where people that were actually lying on the floor prone wouldn't stand up either once they'd been hit. They just stopped moving, which is really quite confusing. You need to make this clear so that the players shooting you know to stop. Another thing that was actually quite confusing for me is that a lot of players, once they were actually waiting around for a medic, would actually just stand up with their guns held in both hands as such. It wasn't shouldered or anything, just held and just milling around. And I'm looking at these players through my scope and I'm thinking, are they in the game? Are they not in the game? And so this would create instances where you might accidentally shoot someone that's waiting for a medic and not realise it, or you could gloss over someone that you thought wasn't in the game, only to have them spot you and shoot you. So again, this just emphasises the fact that morning safety brief needs to be said in the full every single day. So what about the gaming area itself then? Well, the first thing I need to point out is that the Woodland the site is based in is huge. You've got a lot of open area on offer here, and for the vast majority it's virgin woodland. However, there's a lot of compounds almost, which have been built up from once portable structures which have just been melded together to create one interconnected set of buildings. Now, going from the stark contrast of dark, enclosed, confined CQB action to just stepping out the door into being open woodland was actually really quite jarring in cases and made the site very, very interesting to play in that regard. As well as the compounds, they also had various camps scattered throughout the woodland itself. These could feature tents, quite high quality wooden barricades. There was an area with a load of vehicles that were parked up in one area that was all playable. And there was also a maze area at the top, which again was quite close CQB action, except the roof was missing. So not only did you have to worry about a target being just around the corner in front of you, you could also have to worry about shots dinging in from the hill just opposite. So very interesting area to play in here. Now, we didn't actually get to see the vast majority of the site during on the day. We were mainly walking to the areas that were closer to the safe zone due to the low numbers. However, I've been informed that on larger game days with more players, they would actually use vehicles to ferry people out to further areas of the site, which I'd imagine would make that less of an issue. So needless to say, you've got a lot of gaming here, and I can't see you becoming bored with this with multiple visits. Like, it would take months for me to see everything that this site has to offer before I could even considered the notion of becoming bored with it. So what were we doing during the games themselves then? Well, we'd started off the day with a simple attack and defend game type whereby attackers had a suitcase bomb that they had to get into the building complex, which was defended by our team. Now, when we started this off, our defending team had unlimited medics. However, there was a 20-second medic delay for us to be able to get back into the game, as opposed to the attacker's 10-second delay. Now, although there is a difference between the two, I don't think the difference was large enough to matter. Once you've got a lot of defending players in a small complex all firing at the same general direction, it is very easy to just get one person medicing a guy back in whilst another couple lay down suppressive fire. So this game did tend to drag on a little bit. Now, what left me scratching my head though is the Marshals obviously realised this at the end of the game, so when it came to turn it around, they put the defending team then on the limited medics. Now, I don't necessarily think that was very fair. If you've got a game that is quite literally a carbon copy of the first, you're just turning it around, swapping the sides over, they need to be identical. Yes, I don't agree with the unlimited medic in the first game. However, I don't think then changing that for the other team, it's going to piss off some of the players because they're going to realise that it's not fair. We were then playing a second attack-defend game type. However, the bomb was already hidden in the building and attackers had to come into the building, storm the buildings and find it. Now, this was played in a different complex, which was a lot more open out the back and had a lot more windows for defenders to lean out of, and so it was very easy to lock down the attacking players. But the Marshals seemed to make the same mistake as they did in the first game again, because our team had the unlimited medics, whereas when they swapped it over, their team had the limited number. So I didn't really get that. It's like you've realised what the problem was at the start, corrected it, and then made the exact same problem again. Obviously, it didn't help that the area we were defending the second time was a lot more open, so it's a lot easier to nail down the attacking team. So again, this dragged on a little bit further than I think. If you want to make these two flow a bit quicker, as I say, either add in the option of the defenders having a limited number of regens, this way attackers will be able to pick them off one by one, or have it so that defenders aren't just confined to the structures. This would allow them to spread out a little bit and make it harder for another friendly player to come and medic them back in the game because they're further away and it's more dangerous to do so. After lunch we ended up playing a game where we had to escort an objective around the site. Now, this was a particularly interesting one because although we could go anywhere we liked, the objective that we were carrying every 5 minutes would make a very loud audible tone, so the other team that was trying to hunt us down could easily hear this and figure out where we were and where the objective was. So it's not like we could just hide it in the woods and walk off because the other team would just ignore us and go straight for the objective and get it. So we had to keep it with us. The attackers were always aware of where we were, and to some extent they were aware of where we were going as well. We had cases where the other team tried to surround us, and there was a case where they'd actually set up an ambush in wait of us because they predicted where we were going. This made this game type extremely interesting to play in, and I was definitely a fan of that one. We also played a second attack and defence sort of thing, but this time one player on the defending team had 2 balloons on his back, and the objective was for the attackers to pop those 2 balloons and then would win them the game. Now obviously the twist on this one is that they don't necessarily have to eliminate all the defenders to win the game. So we had to concentrate less on defending the building and more defending that person. This time both teams when they were defending had the limited number of medics, and I think this is what made the game flow a little bit better. It's a shame that I don't have any footage of this game unfortunately, because we were posted up in the second story of the compound and actually executed a brilliant ambush on the attacking team that were coming in. So I really enjoyed this particular game type because of that, and it just kind of highlighted the fact that having the high ground advantage in that sort of situation just added another element to the game entirely, so very fun to play in. So whilst these game types I believe had a couple of mechanical flaws in terms of the medics that could be quite easily rectified, the games themselves and the areas they played in, they had some pretty new ideas in there that I found very enjoyable, and it was certainly fun to go through these and explore these new game types in the gaming area, so definitely a fan of the games that were on offer during the day. So overall then, would I recommend a visit to Phoenix Airsoft in Mansfield? I'm not going to say that it's a bad site, however there were a few significant things that did raise my eyebrow during the day. The amount of non-hit takes, the lack of clear indication when someone was hit or not, the fact that the site owner was firing a gun in the safe zone, the fact that I got hit by a ricochet in the safe zone. Now, these are all things that, whilst individually I probably could ignore and brush off, the fact that they all happened on the same day, however, makes them a lot harder to ignore and a bit more significant. There's quite some serious warning flags in there. That said, however, these are all problems which, whilst serious, are also very, very easily fixed. I do genuinely believe that the lax in standards on the day was more to the fact that there was a low player count and it's rainy. This doesn't make it acceptable, it does however make it more understandable. There's not a problem with the core of the site itself. The gaming area is interesting. The games have obviously had a lot of thought put into them and they were fun to play themselves. Mechanically, it needs a little bit of tweaking in places, but the fundamental nature of this site is good. I just genuinely believe that I turned up on a bad day where they just really dropped the ball in places. So whilst there are some glaring issues with the day that I turned up, I made a very bad first impression. I recognise that these problems are all things that could be very easily fixed with minimal to no effort whatsoever. So whilst I'm not going to give a glowing recommendation to this site, it's not put me off going again. I definitely think that on a busier day it'd be a lot more interesting to do, and once hopefully they've seen this and took this on board, it would instantly fix all the problems that I've listed. However, I think I will need to go back at some point later on just to double check to make sure that they have. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed my video review of Phoenix Airsoft in Mansfield. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask me, or maybe you want to share your own experiences of this site, just leave them in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And until next time, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.
In the smoke. He's gone. His mate's gone as well. There's a guy in a green armband in that smoke that's still alive. Mate, 2 o'clock, don't move. Got him, he's gone.